And hello, good people of the internet. This is Tommy Kelly, and this is, of course, the Tommy Kelly podcast. And this is a follow-up, or a sequel, if you will, to last week's podcast, where I talked a bit about how I define myself in the very kind of obvious ways of things like sexuality, gender, race, ethnicity, etc., and that kind of thing. And one of the feedbacks I got was from the great Robbie, who he of Chariots Wheels fame, and of course is the admin, one of the admins in the 47's Facebook group. And he says, "You're so straight, you're so cis, you're so cis, straight, white," and whatever. And you know what? I totally am, and it's not much I can do about it. It is who I am. But I do try to, as much as possible, you know, have an open view about all of these things and be aware that I have a very limited outlook from, you know, my kind of my vantage point in the world and where I am situated, where I was born, where my background is, and all of those type of things. But it is something I work on and I'm aware of, and I understand as a limitation and a lack of understanding and all of those things. So it is something I work on. So this week I will be going a bit more into the ideas of how I define myself, what in general how we define ourselves, but through my kind of eyes, because that's all I have, you know, authority to talk about. Where I'll talk a bit about the different kind of things I have, and some of them being negative in a way of my definitions or kind of ideas I have about myself in life, and then to balance it off, I put in a few kind of things that I'm happy about myself, not really to kind of compliment myself or big up myself, but more just to have it a bit balanced where it's not just me talking for 40 minutes or whatever about how shit a person I am. The other thing I want to just mention at this point is that it's Sunday today when I record this, and things aren't good. Things aren't good at all. One of my dogs, Jessie, is very, very sick, like alarmingly very sick. She hasn't eaten in nearly a week now. She was quite jaundiced, although she seems to be a bit better at that. And she's just not herself. She's usually a very giddy, full of energy, very happy kind of dog. And she's just kind of sitting around. It's very sad. And, which is interesting because the whole last month of the journey, that's the thing we do over on Patreon, the year-long shadow work, it was all about death, and definitely seems like death had stalked me over that month. It was a tremendously painful month in many, many ways, and I kind of ran away from it in the end and didn't do all the work that I should have done within that month. But you know, I will come back to it and do more. It's just sometimes you have to chunk this down and do things, and you know, bit at a time, and do the best you can with it. But it was interesting that coming up the last couple of days was really obvious that the dog was not doing well. Jessie wasn't doing well, and it's going, oh, if I can just get past this month, you know. But it rolled into the next month. But we will see. I'm, as you will find out from the large section of this podcast, I'm definitely not an optimist when it comes to life. So, but anyway, I'll not talk any more about that because I'm getting into dark places, and there's enough dark places without me adding to them. So let's get into the main body of this podcast. So years ago, when I was getting into Chaos Magic proper, after I'd seen the Disinfo lecture by Grant Morrison, I'd read Liber Null, I'd, you know, completely devoured the Rune Soup website, which of course was just a website at that time. There was no podcast, there was no anything, you know. Gordon, I remember reading Rune Soup for a long while before I ever even heard Gordon talk. And so I was looking for kind of forums, or, you know, like old school, like almost chat rooms or whatever that used to be the thing in the internet years ago when I was a young fella, and so was the internet. And I was hanging out in Reddit for a long while, and I still do, as is my want. To find Reddit great, even though it is the hub of all things negative. And it can be tough it can be certainly tough if you're any kind of way precious about yourself, or in any sort of way a creator. I remember when I was putting up webcomics on Reddit, me and my friends were doing it, and it was just, people were so nasty, like really nasty. But when you become a hero on Reddit and something goes well, you feel like the greatest person in the world. So, you take the good with the bad and all that. So I was looking at the Orocult in particular on our Reddit was pretty good, and I enjoyed it and learned a lot from that, but I wasn't still getting what I wanted from it. Everyone has kind of a thing with Oroccultists. There's a golden year or golden age for everyone. And I've certainly passed mine, but that's me, and it's the people themselves. Like people go, "Oh, I wish I went back to the old days of Orocult," but it's just that's a lot about how you were at the time. I think I don't think forums or things fundamentally change really. Like they're the same as they were. It's just you've learned more, and so that whole thing of this used to be really interesting. It was really interesting, possibly because you were learning stuff, and now that you know this stuff, it just seems boring because it's people asking questions that you used to ask 5 years ago. And when you don't know the answer, it all seems really interesting. But when you do know the answer, it all seems repetitive and boring. So I think that's just what happens in kind of, you hang around communities or forums for long enough, you just, you start just seeing the repetitiveness of it, and the kind of shininess of it goes away. So that's kind of where I am with Orocult. I still go in and out of it most days. I still go in out because I check Reddit every day. But it has this thing where there's an instant downvote, particularly on my stuff. I don't know if there's someone out to get me, fair dues if you've that much time. But as soon as I post something, it's immediately downvoted, and it just kind of, not that I care in a way, but it's like, what's the point? What's the point? So I was looking around, and on Facebook, I came across this community called CMG, which is Chaos Magic Group. And what I was hoping for out of it all was that I would, in some way, by entering this group of people, kind of challenge myself and my views of the world, and try and come out some way of my programming, and to have a real kind of look at my, say, my morals or my boundaries, or how I approach the world, or what I think is right about the world, the right way to do it. The kind of even to legalities of things, of doing the right thing, following the rules. How would I break out of these rules? So what I was looking for at that point from the whole chaos magic thing was kind of to reprogram myself, to challenge myself, to surround myself with people who would have very different views than mine, that would challenge me to break loose out of my boundaries, and the kind of person I had pigeonholed in many ways myself into being. And so I joined it, and that wasn't exactly what happened, but while I was hoping for this kind of free spirit of, I don't know what, of challengeness, what mostly it was people, nasty people being nasty, trolls being trolls, and there was other subgroups where there was people just sending or posting nude stuff all the time, which was very interesting for Facebook for me, because I just assumed at that point that Facebook didn't have these kind of wee dark places at all. I thought Facebook was very on the ball, but Facebook is very dark places. If you want, not that nudity is that dark, but I just meant that I thought Facebook was this very kind of sterile or sterilized kind of safe, PG, that kind of thing. I can't think of the words that this kind of so then when you find somewhere where everyone's just taking their clothes off and sending photos to each other in a group, and it's all fine, you kind of go, oh, right, Facebook probably has very strange places underneath the veneer, which I'm sure all places do. I'm sure plenty of places of the internet have all these things. In fact, we know this to be true. So that I found that in the group was called, the subgroup where everyone was, the whole sex thing or whatever, was called the dungeon or something similar. And I found that interesting. That was a bit, not challenging, and just that I found it, that's different from what I thought. But the rest of it I didn't get what I needed out of it in that way. And I very quickly came to the conclusion or thing was that, but of course I couldn't, because the way I was looking to be challenged on my boundaries was in, that I wanted to be challenged in a particular way, in an obvious way, in a place, that I wanted to be pushed kind of almost like in the way I wanted to be. So I wanted to be challenged under my kind of rules, with my kind of I wanted to be challenged in the way I wanted to be challenged, rather than just what I thought I wanted was to be, surrounded by all of these new kind of stimuli or whatever. And I mean, you're never going to be challenged in the way you want to be challenged, because then it's not challenging. It's not fresh. It's not new. It's not kind of exciting. Maybe it's not. It's not challenging. It's because you're expecting it. It's within your wheelhouse. It's within your comfort zone. It's okay to be challenged in this particular type of way, because I'm okay with that, and I've my boundaries are a bit malleable in those kind of areas, so I'm okay to be challenged in like the certain ways. But in other ways I wasn't, and I found that's like this whole thing that people come across as, say, the nastiness, or being really unpleasant and all of that. That was actually the challenge bit for me, because I don't like it, and I find it challenging in that kind of sense, and I find it very hard to deal with people like that. And an awful lot of people that I first encountered in CMG have that kind of aggressive personality, that they're proud to be aggressive, this angry, both male and female, and other, that they have this kind of deliberate kind of antagonism that they're proud to have, that they see as a good thing, that and that I find that interesting, because it's so opposed to the type of way I kind of am about myself, where I try, like, almost to the point of being a people pleaser, if you want. I kind of, not that I want necessarily people to like me. I'm okay with people to dislike me, because not everyone can like you. But it's like to openly meet someone and immediately attack them in such a way that they can't like you. That you're not in any kind of way. You're not. I'm okay when people dislike me after we've an interaction, we've been ourselves, see each other and go, oh, we just don't get on, and you're an arsehole, I'm an arsehole, let's, that's fine. But like, just go meet someone and immediately be an arsehole to that person for the sake of being an arsehole. It's something that I couldn't do. And what I tried, because I found that interesting, I found out, I was going, well, there's something here that I should, maybe I'm too much people pleasing, too much of trying to play the nice guy. I do have issues where I don't like feeling I've done something wrong in someone, or I've offended someone, or I've hurt someone, or I've come off badly or whatever, to the point of that it'll annoy me, it'll keep me awake at night until I have it solved or resolved. I can't let that kind of go. I don't like people having a kind of an unfair or an unjustified poor opinion of me, when I feel that, or maybe it is a fair and valid thing, anyway, depending on the situation. So what I decided that I would do was have a look at that by having, I would set up another sock account, fake account on Facebook, and try to be a shithead to people. And I couldn't, even under the anonymity, my God, I used to be able to talk properly. Well, I could never talk properly, some people would say, with my accent, but with that included, I used to be able to say words. So even with the fact that no one knew who I was, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't have that aggression, that nastiness, that deliberately poking at people. And this is not like going up to really nice people and being aggressive or antagonistic to them. It's even going up to the antagonistic people. I find it not pleasing or not satisfying or almost wrong to push back against that in an aggressive manner. It makes me feel bad. Does not make me feel good, and I don't like it. So I very quickly, like days, possibly a week, deleted that sock. I didn't. It's not what I am. And even in computer games and stuff, when I'll take on a character and I'll be a complete bastard in this, whatever game I'm playing, whatever, and then very quickly I'm not. I play as a somewhat good guy. Like, I mean, within boundaries, I'm not a saint by any means. And I don't want to kind of put that forward that that's what I see, but it's that's what I see myself as. I certainly don't. But if I found that interesting, so that was the kind of thing that I found challenging about it. So the main thing I learned, and I grew to love CMG for its nastiness, for its cliquiness or clickness, whatever way you want to pronounce that word, and for the fact that underneath it was a group of people who were fantastic, very knowledgeable, very friendly, very open, very helpful, very warm, very endearing. These wonderful people who had all gathered round this kind of cesspool of hell that is CMG, that like even people, the biggest fans of CMG know it's a cesspool of hell and are kind of almost proud of that, wear it as a badge of honor, probably is a better way of describing it, but it's full of hate and full of nastiness, but a great training ground and a great proving ground and a great way to challenge yourself, but will not be in the way you want it to be. If you're anything like me, you're not going to be challenged in the safe way. You'll be challenged by being put into a cesspool of hell. So, and for those who don't know, I ended up being the admin of that group for about 2 years, and we did loads of AMAs in it. We did the most famous thing, I suppose, out of CMG that is now is the half-peeled orange game with the Hello Sailor. And but when I left, it's over a year now. It's definitely over a year since I left being an admin, and I pop in and out of CMG every now and again. We still do the Positive Friday posts, all that kind of thing. But it's not a place I can spend an awful lot of time in anymore, and especially when I came out of being admin and the release of all the kind of drama that you have to deal with and the personalities that you have to deal with and the egregore itself that is CMG, which is a proper egregore. And when people say to me, "Are the 40 servants egregores?" I go, they're not, they're servitors. CMG is a proper egregore. Definitely, there's no question about that, and it has many iterations now. There's version 3s, version 2. The one I was in is the version 2, and loads of splinter groups and all that. So it's definitely worth checking out if that's something. But be prepared to not like it. A lot of people leave very, very quickly and don't enjoy that kind of atmosphere. And it's not like I don't think you necessarily have to suffer the bad to get the good. So, I don't think it's like that's part of the deal. I don't think it has to be part of the deal, but you should definitely spend as a chaos magician, you should spend some time in CMG, if anything, if for nothing more than to learn the state of chaos magic on the internet. And it will very quickly, one section of chaos magic on the internet, it'll very easily or very quickly open your eyes and all that. So that was the kind of thing I was like kind of always kind of trying to look at what have I got that I would like to change? What would I like the world to be challenged in? How would I like to break these kind of rules, these taboos that I have about myself? And, seeing that it's not as easy as just exposing yourself to something that you think is in some way going to be a positive corrupting influence, because you're never going to be corrupted in the way you want to be corrupted, because that's not corruption. There's this idea of, breaking apart and falling, and rebuilding yourself in some way. And I like that idea. I remember when I was in secondary school, I was coming near the end of secondary school, which is high school equivalent. We call it secondary school here because we've primary school, secondary school. And I was trying to, as I always am, was trying to lose weight. I was trying to become more attractive. I was trying to do all of these things to, become a bit more, I don't know, open and not friendly, but more of a presence and around, rather than this kind of person I kind of didn't like. And I came up with this idea and I called it Operation Superman, where I was going to break down all the stuff that I have and rebuild myself in a positive kind of thing. Listened to lots of Tony Robbins at the time. Stuart Wilde, as always, was a big influence. But the Tony Robbins thing in that one was like trying to write down a list of all your kind of attributes that you want and, work towards them kind of thing. So it's always kind of been there in the back of my mind of this kind of idea. So I was thinking over the last while, particularly since the last week when I did the first half of this podcast, I was kind of thinking, what are some of the big kind of definitions or rules I have about myself or about life or how I see things that really read into how I approach life. And what attracts me to chaos magic is the kind of thing that there was the promise that you can see all these things as just things rather than default settings in your your OS of your brain or of your humanity. And so that's what it kind of looked. But there's some of these things that are so embedded in me that I find it's probably that even the idea of belief shifting is very hard in these kind of, to sustain over any kind of length of time, where I can sustain it. I can sustain an awful lot of belief shifting until there's the first or possibly second big pushback. Like, it's very easy to be say you're a very negative person. It's very easy to be positive for an hour until something shitty happens, and then you're straight back negative person. And I'm sure that kind of happens in whatever area you want. So the first thing I came up with, and that's something that I feel is how I view the world, but I've no way of proving it. I'm not even sure it's true, but I definitely act as if it's true. And it's this idea of fatalism. And it's come home to me this week with Jessie, the dog, getting very sick. And I the thing that happens when any of these kind of things happen to me is that my first kind of reaction, or my first kind of feeling, is that this is the way it's meant to be. I have no say in this, that I have no right to mess with this. That this is as if there's some part of me that in some way, well, while not necessarily thinks there's a great divine plan, although possibly like is there a plan for individuals? Like, it's kind of that whole thing when people say, everything happens for a reason. And I think that's very easy to see in your life with the benefit of hindsight, because that is the thing that happened, and then the reason occurs because of that. You retcon the kind of the reason into it. You can see it's like, oh, that breakup that I had 10 years ago, it was the best thing that ever happened to me because I went on and have what I have now. But you only think it was the best thing to happen because it happened, and you're here in this position looking back. It might necessarily have been. It's just that you've decided that that's the way it is. If that makes sense. But not all, same much, that's the worst thing that ever happened to me. Sometimes the worst thing that ever happened to you is the worst thing that ever happened to you. So, none of these things are tied down, and as far as I can see, anyway. So anyway, fatalism. So like the example then of Jessie and being sick, and I kind of go, well, if Jessie has I'm not happy about this. It's not that I find this easy, but it's like kind of going, if Jessie's time is now, then who am I to get in the way of that? If she is on her way out, notice I can't even say the words. If she's, if her time has come, then who am I to interfere with that? And that's, a very kind of fatalistic, in that this has been already decided. Anything you do is interfering with that and possibly upsetting the plan, annoying the thing, or, you're basically an interference. Which I suppose does come back to the whole thing I have about where I push that whole thing of non-resistance to life and non-resistance to things. But it's slightly different in that sometimes you do want things to be different. Like, I don't want my dog to die. She's very young. She's only 7, and I don't want her to be in pain, all of these things. But there's a huge part of me that feels, and it's not guilt, but feels that no, I like, say, if, as a magician, that I have a whole arsenal of things that I could be doing, or well, I did do anyway. But in a healing situation, there's a whole arsenal of things that a magician can do. Particularly the whole arsenal of things that a magician can do who has a background in energy healing, holistic therapies, and alternative medicine, and who also quite happily went to the vet and got antibiotics and anti-inflammatories and all of these things. So it's like complementary medicine, not alternative medicine. But it kind of feels, in one sense, that although going to the vet and getting the anti-inflammatory and the antibiotics, that's okay as part of this divine plan. That's not interfering. That's, while you're doing your best, you're doing everything that's kind of, orthodox way of doing it, and that's perfectly fine, and let that either work or it won't work, and if it doesn't work, that's the way it was meant to be. If it does work, that's the way it's meant to be. But doing anything on a kind of a magical level or whatever seems too much of an interference, that, you shouldn't mess with things, in a sense, spiritually or whatever. And that, I don't think that's right. Like, I think you should fuck with whatever you want to fuck with, and you should change whatever you want to change, and you as a person that should impose your will on the world And why not try and save your dog? Like, who's this? Like, why this fatalist thing of now is the time? You know, it's as if I'm living my life through, you know, this divine plan that I should not interfere with. And it's kind of like the final month of the journey that we've just moved into is a kind of a HGA master, higher self kind of working, whatever. We're trying to integrate all we've learned over the year, but at the same time also, in some sense, giving up a bit of sovereignty to your higher self, who from a higher perspective, a more complete perspective, has a better view on your life and therefore can guide you in a better way. You just have to trust it even when things don't seem the way to you from your perspective, right? You know, but that's the point. You're kind of struggling because you're doing things wrong, but from a higher perspective, things that appear wrong to you in that moment that you should be doing ultimately lead to, you know, the greater truth, the better outcome, all of these type of things. And part of that kind of working is that old thing from the Bible, which not my will but thine be done, where you're giving over the kind of you're trusting in this higher power to lead you rather than imposing your will. And of course, coming from having the debt month in the last month and being certainly stalked badly by debt on many different levels. Debt, you know, of course, is far bigger than just physical debt. You know, there's a whole lot of stuff. And you know, and as I said, that impact in a very big way with me. But then to have the stalking of the debt around my dog as well. But then while we finished that month and led into next month, it again was kind of the focus is on kind of letting go and not getting in the way. And there's a huge part of me that understands that the non-resistance of life and the non-kind of push, when you don't push back, when you just allow things, from a creative point of view, it certainly works. From an easing of pain, certainly works. And from a diffusion of terrible situations or stuff in your life, certain non-resistance certainly works. And but it's just the non-resistance in the point of, say, a healing, or not even a healing. Let's take it from another example, like that, even like say even a particular job I wanted or something, or some big thing that I wanted to happen in my life. Or even say that whole thing I've talked about before, target-specific love magic. It seems similar to that all magic in some sense seems a bit like that when it comes to the point of this, am I fucking with some fatalistic divine plan? And that's definitely a blockage or a definition that I have that I don't know if it's true, but is impacting an awful lot of my life, in that I feel that I would probably be doing an awful lot more magic. I would probably have an awful lot more push up, imposing my will on my life, an awful lot more, other than I feel that in some sense, somewhere along the way, something else has a plan for my life. Or I'm being guided, or I'm being pushed, or there's something that life has to be done in a certain way, and doing magic or doing any of this kind of pushback against it ultimately long term hinders or lengthens the experience. It you know, makes things longer, harder, worse. And I definitely have that thought in there. There's something that I have a fatalistic thing, so I would define myself, bringing back to what the podcast was, as a fatal. I have a fatalistic streak in me, or a viewpoint, which is not good. And there's a thing I watched on a TV show recently, and I can't remember what show it is, but I think it might be Legion, but I'm not sure. Please, someone tell me what it is. Where the main character is talking, looking back over situations that happened or whatever's going on, and says, "I am a witness to my life. That's what I'm here for." And I've come across this before, and you know, it's not a new idea at all. It's you know, it comes from many different kind of spiritual kind of schools of thought, where the idea is that you're not here in a sense to make decisions. You're not here to do, you know, to change things. You're here to experience and witness it, that all of these decisions have already been made. All of this has been played out. This is all in a sense, the script has already been written, and you're here for the sake. This, I think, this is also in a film as well. That's from years ago. You're here to It's from the Matrix, isn't it? That from the second Matrix, where the Oracle's talking to Neo and says that you're here just to witness it, or you're here just to experience it. And the Matrix thinks that you're here to understand why you've made these decisions. It's not to make any more decisions. So there's kind of all that kind of in my head too, that there's a possibility that you're here, I'm here, as a witness rather than a maneuver. But I have maneuvered life, I have changed life, and things have got better. And maybe it's just a guilt thing of trying to feel that you shouldn't have the things you want in life. That the Catholic guilt, again, is that having what you want happen is bad. And so therefore, letting life happen at you is the only way to not interfere and feel bad. That's interesting. I think, again, I'll go to my Catholic guilt on why I have these things. But fatalism, yeah, a rule or definition I have about life that I don't necessarily think is true. Or at least not the full truth. Maybe some, it's like, maybe a plot line, but not a full script written or something. I don't know. Which leads me then to the next one, that I've certainly, a definition I have about myself is that I'm a victim. And I've talked about this endlessly in the podcast and on the blog, and it was a huge part of my blog for about a year, trying to work through this kind of victim thing, where rather than engage with the world and kind of, put myself forward again, I can see, there's stuff echoing with the fatalism thing, that I kind of try to change life, if you want, or engage with life from kind of a point of view of a victim, but it's a passive aggressive kind of victimhood in a way. It's like the martyr that has to be seen to be a martyr. And that, look what you've done to me. Can you not look how I suffer? Look who I am. This kind of, that kind of victim, not in the victim of that it's necessarily something bad's happened, I'm the victim. The victim playing is it rather than the victim. And of course that isn't true. I mean, everyone is a victim in certain different ways, but coming from that kind of defining thing of how I approach the world as a victim, and it's a huge thing with me, and it's something that I definitely am much better at. But every time I think, I'm done with that, it raises its ugly head, and I notice I'm at it again. And it's a controlling issue I have with things, but it's also, in a sense, how I get people on my side in some way, or it's how I get love in many ways, or how I try to take love from other people, or steal love, or manipulate people into loving me, is by making them feel sorry for me in certain ways. That's very horrible when you see yourself doing that. I remember when I was in primary school, and it was like the end of the year dance or something. We were all like 10, 11, whatever we were, and no one would dance with me because I was a little, unpopular fat kid who had no social skills whatsoever, and still to a large extent. I've social skills now. That's not true. And so I kind of made everyone feel sorry for me. No one will dance with me. No one will dance with me. And then, got everyone to dance with me. So I learned that trick early of how to get what I want by making people sorry for me. But there's only so far you can go with that. That's not, you can't get everything, and people get sick of that and see through it as well. So, but it's definitely, there's a definition of victim in me as well. The other one, I'm hesitant to talk about this because I just know the emails and messages I get about it, and people are wonderful and all of those things, but it's that whole thing when I was doing the weight loss for the Soul series, and about my battle with being overweight and all that kind of thing. And it's definitely, my physicality is one of the biggest issues I have in my life, and something I always forget about whenever there's like kind of big magic to be done, like, what is the thing you want, or come up with the one true aim and all of that. It's as if there's an avoidance of it too. But I don't like talking about it because everyone just demands that their way of losing weight or getting fit or whatever is the only way, and I'm sick of that conversation totally. But just brought it up here because it's as part of the the whole defining thing. Although I haven't been talking about, I have lost a good bit of weight recently, which I'm happy with. But again, there's a particular weight target that I always get stuck at, that it takes me ages to get past, and I'm right on the button of that. So the last couple of weeks I haven't really been doing well. Well, diet and exercise and all that's absolutely fine, but it's just this thing in my brain that won't let me get past a particular weight. That reckons I should just stop weighing myself, possibly. Another definition I have about myself is definitely that I'm a sad person, and I kind of have this the whole thing of I will, in films or in TV shows or books or whatever, I kind of associate myself or compare myself or feel a bond or whatever with, the depressed, sad person. Like I feel like there's some sort of camaraderie, or I understand. Thing in the watched recently an episode of West Wing where it's Noel, that episode where Joshua Lynham is doing he's been shot a couple of episodes back, and he's not doing well with it, and he confuses music with gunshots. But anyway, the end of it, he's talking to Leo McGarry, and it's just this kind of long speech about the whole thing about a guy being down a hole, and people passing the hole and trying to get him out, and he can't get him out, and eventually his friend comes along, and rather than trying to get out, jumps down in the hole with him, and he says, "Why did you come down the hole?" He says, "Well, now we're both in this hole." And he goes, "It's okay, I've been in this hole before and I know how to get out." That's very sweet. But it's kind of that association I have is with the sad person and with the sadness, and I associate far too much with the sadness of life and of humanity, so much so that even when happy things happen, I'm immediately drawn to how this is going to be sad at some point. And like having a baby and seeing this wonderful, new life or whatever, one of the first kind of things that happened to me, it's got quite emotional about the amount of sadness that this baby is going to suffer, if you want, in his life. And that's something I would like to not have, carrying around this huge kind of sadness that I have constantly, always have. I remember getting Reiki early 20s, possibly when I was 22, and the guy, he was very good, and he's a good energy healer. Certainly that helped me in a way, but he said you brought a ton of this sadness, this thing in, or you carried an awful lot around this with you, and he couldn't work out whether I brought that in with me, his words, or whether it's something I accumulated over the way or something, but it's kind of that there's a blog post on the website, and the planet from the 47 is mostly about it, but it's what have you got in your gravitational field and your energetic gravitational field, and I've surrounded myself with a lot of sadness. But I was recently talking on that documentary that I talked about last week with Spud from the Comedy Cast. Check out the Comedy Cast, great podcast. Where I was talking about but it seems like the most natural reaction to existence should be sadness or depression or horror or stress or anxiety. But yet, as humans, that's not really our reaction to it. It's actually seen as against the norm to have that kind of feeling. Like depressed people have something wrong with them. Depression is a mental illness. It's not normal. It's an ill. Yet, look at life or existence for less than even 30 seconds and it's horrifying. And it's, and the natural reaction does seem like, from a logical Vulcan point of view, that, you should be a bit sad about it. It's like everything around you is going to get sick and die. You're going to die. Everything that's in the room and everything you own, all of those things are going to disintegrate and fall apart. Every memory is going to be wiped clear. Every experience, all of these things are all fleeting. Eventually the sun is going to explode and destroy the solar system, and then eventually the universe is going to be a cold, dark, non-expanding place. If we go with the whole materialist, fundamental materialist outlook on society, on life. But so, I mean, that's horrifying. And then you look at nature and you look at how animals treat each other and eat each other and, or torture to each other. That's some of the most horrifying things I've ever seen in my life. For nature programs, some of the things that you see nature doing to each other. And how do we accept that? As well, we ignore it for the most part and we pretend it's not real. And also too, we've decided that humans aren't really part of nature, or no, we have this kind of things where, oh, we're destroying nature, or we're greater than nature, even though we don't really verbalize that, but that's what we kind of, how we act. It's like we're destroying nature. Well, we are nature, so it's nature destroying nature. But we can't think that way because that just gives an excuse for the whole thing. But there's definitely that side of me that lingers certainly on the sadness, and I have that thing which I would love to get rid of, and I would definitely love to not have as a definition of how I see life, as life is sad. But it's definitely one I have, and it's a huge impact on my life. I mean, there's no two ways around it, or whatever. Times of immense joy and happiness and all of these things, but a default setting of mine would certainly be, and something I have to be really careful. I'm much better at it now, much better at it. My default setting would be to spend too long in the darkness and stuff. Remember, I used to have to wake up in the morning. I don't do it now, but I used to have to wake up in the morning and just have the mantra, for about 10, 15 minutes going, everything is okay, you're okay, everything's going to be fine, everything's okay. Or otherwise, I'd wake up into the darkness, into the thing. A lot of that had to do was waking up with the radio coming on and the news coming on and being bombarded with a list of everything that's terrible about the world. Turning away from news and turning away for a lot of these kind of negative places had a huge impact on the sadness element of my life. But it is, to a large extent, it's ignoring. It's that whole thing. It's ignoring the bad bits. But sometimes I have to do that because I end up not being able to actually function that well when when the sadness hits and stuff like that. So that's kind of a couple of the definitions of bad ones, or things that I wish I could get rid of. Some of the good ones, and I won't spend too long on them, but I just tried to have some sort of balance. I definitely have a good definition of myself as being a self-reliant person. I, to a fault, in that I don't rely on other people, that I probably could, but I will do everything myself. If there's something I want, I will learn how to do it. I'll do all those things, and I will not have to rely on other people for things that I need to get done or want to do, or those things. Like if I want to do a comic, I'll learn how to draw, I'll learn how to write, I'll learn how to colour, I'll learn how to print, I'll learn how to do all the things so that I don't have to rely on other people to do it. Slowly get better at that I can allow people to take over and do different things. But it's something that I think it's a good thing to be self-reliant. I think that it's worse that if you're always constantly relying on other people to do things for you, or you can't do things without other people. Like, say you can't, I don't know, you're a musician and you'd love to record albums, but you can't because you don't know how to use the recording software. Learn the fucking recording software. Which is not that going into that is, I know how to get answers. If I don't know something, I know how to find out. And I thought everyone knew how to do that, but it turns out people don't know how to do that. That even that whole thing, let me Google that for you. People even don't know how to Google certain things, how to get the answers from that. But it's more than just Google. I know where to look for things, that if I don't know something, I know how to learn. I know how to gain skills. I know how to teach myself stuff. I know how to improve, which I think, again, I thought that was something everyone did, but it's from experience, people don't know how to do that. So I'm very happy that that's something I can do. I would describe myself as someone who's somewhat smart, but with the added advantage that I like, in many ways, being the dumbest person in the room. I like being surrounding myself with people who know more than me, and I don't like being the expert in the room. I find that immensely pressuring because I don't feel an expert in anything. But it not even that, it's boring too, in that you're not learning anything. Although I did spend a long time teaching, but it's a different mode or whatever. But I like surrounding myself, and I'm comfortable surrounded with people who know more than me about things that I want to know more about, and that's good. I don't have to be the big man and the people looked up. But although that said, I do enjoy winning very much so, and I do enjoy doing well, and um, accomplishing things and all that kind of and getting accolades and all that kind of thing. But that's kind of a separate thing. One of the greatest lessons I ever learned was to say when you don't know something, rather than pretending you know something. And when I learned that was through sound engineering, where you go into all of these different places, different venues, and you'd walk up to their setup, and in a sense, I used to pretend that I would know all of these things, all of these what everything did. And then one day, for whatever reason, it just kind of hit me that goes, well, I can just say, I don't know how to use this. Can you show me how to use this to the in-house engineer? And then they'd be absolutely happy to show you. Yeah, this is this. And then and then there's no bluffing, and an awful lot of stress comes away. You've gained more knowledge. So anytime I don't know something, I'll just say, I don't know that something, can you explain it to me? And it's like, rather than coming from the place of being an expert or knowing everything, come from constant learning. And I learn stuff, so I'm very happy with that. So they're just a few of the things, not hark on about how awesome Tommy is. So ultimately, it all comes down to the why, when I have all these things in me, like the fatalism, the victimhood, and etc., that and this idea of being a witness to your life, that there's a plan, or there's the kind of you're interfering with people or something that has more of a say, in a sense, over your life, and that by you interfering, that you are interfering, and you're hassling and holding things up or making things worse, versus the autonomy or sovereignty or thing that chaos magic proposes. And I think that's why I find it very attractive, in that my default setting would be, in a sense, fatalistic, whereas the way out of that is the this idea of that you can take all of these things into your own hand and see all of these things as only true in the moment or not true in the moment, and that there's no ultimate reality to any of these things, and everything is as equal to each other, because in that it can be useful in a certain situation. So that old saying, or that old prayer, which is God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can change, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I think that's very apt in all of what I've kind of come through, and this week when I was thinking about all of these things or whatever, is that while I think there is something to be this whole kind of fatalism, where there probably is something that if you're here to experience something, or possibly you should just experience certain things, there is points when you do need to take the wheel, and you do need to impose your will on life or the universe or whatever. And the whole thing is to know the difference of when that's happening. And I don't know the difference now, because I would probably verge or push too much to the whole fatalism, but also because I have that thing where I'm trying to working on non-resistance and all that kind of thing. So there's trying to. The good way to kind of look at it is, you don't want to be the guy who is still trying to get back with his ex-girlfriend who has moved on. So, there's that kind of, you don't want to be using magic to try and to change that situation back to where you want, because even when you get it back, it's going to be worse. It's only going to be prolonging it. It's, it's hurtful for everyone. It's, it's fucking up your life. You should just not resist that and move on. But in that moment, that person who's trying to get the ex back, that's very hard to see that kind of thing. So I would probably have leant too far that I see everything as that kind of scenario where you are trying to get your ex-lover back. Even down to things like where I'm trying to heal. I don't want to be interfering with some sort of plan that my dog may have, that he wants to get out, or she wants to get out, if that makes sense. And it's a thing I don't do enough magic because of that, because I have this kind of idea that it's to impose my wants on reality is an equivalent to target specific love magic. In a sense, all magic is, which I don't, from a logical Vulcan point of view, I don't think it is. Like this, I think there's more to the point to being here than just witnessing. But who knows? It's hard to know. I certainly don't know the answers. It's just things that I'm kind of puzzling about. So that is the end of my all my definitions and how do I define myself and what are these things, these stories I tell myself about the world, about myself, and how they're impacting. Some of them I definitely think I can change. Some of them are probably just too inbuilt into me. The whole, as I talked last week about the race, the gender, the sexuality, all of these things, I think certainly can be challenged. Like say the sexuality thing, I know that there's that idea of that if you to put yourself in situations that would challenge it, and to say sexually, whatever. But I don't know. I remember coming up against this idea of that that it was I'm trying to think of his name, porn star Habib. What's his name? Oh, my brain. Porn star occultist, great guy. He's on RuneSoup all the time. Conor Habib. Oh my God, thank you very much. And one of his courses are great. You should do them if you get a chance. His video courses. He talked about in one of them where he says that watch some porn or something that is not that what you're into. Like if you're gay, watch some straight porn and try to get off on it. Challenge yourself in that way. And I tried that, and it didn't do anything for me in the club. Didn't do it. It didn't horrify me. Didn't excite me. Didn't do it. It was just kind of going. It felt too much like an exercise, if you want. But I think there's something that you can certainly challenge yourself in that area. You could probably challenge yourself in your tribalism. Certainly there's things you can you could do very much challenging to try and get out of that and see yourself out of that, like rather than having just say do this because your family's always do this because people in your locale have always done this. Change a football team that you support, to the next town over, or do anything just to get out of that. So I can see challenges in that. The gender stuff, yeah, there's certainly the fluidity thing. I can see, I can understand it. I can totally understand it. I can see it. I don't know where that ends, where that begins, where that's going. I'm interested. I find it fascinating. Some of it I don't understand at all, some of it I do. And it's not, when I say I don't understand it, that's usually people say I don't understand it, and what they mean is I don't approve of it. I just don't understand that. But when they're saying is I just don't approve that, I literally actually mean I don't understand, and I don't have my thoughts or around it, my articulation around it. I don't, it's not fully formed in my brain. I'm not, I don't know enough about it. To have a proper opinion or a viewpoint or to know what I know about it. So I'm kind of okay with just letting that gestate and, continue to take in more information, talk to people and see where that goes. I don't have a firm thought as yet on gender. And it's also because it's the first time I've kind of really questioned that kind of thing up until, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when the real gender kind of debate, really came up. I never questioned before, so it's still fairly new to me. Sexuality, gender, nationality, ethnicity. I don't know. Can that be challenged in kind of a way like that thing of where you can identify as black if you're white, whatever? I don't know. I don't know what the equivalency of watching gay porn if you're straight is in the ethnicity kind of thing. But I'm sure there's something that you could challenge without being without being really weird about the whole thing. But the other things, the fatalism, the the physicality, like say the not being happy with how I look because I'm fat, and that thing I spoke before about that fat comes first, in that you can be extremely talented in one area, but it doesn't matter because you're fat, and that these kind of things. If you haven't heard me talk about that before, it's mentioned a lot in the Weight Loss for the Soul. I just don't want to go into it all again. The sadness thing. And what was the other one? The victim thing. That can definitely be challenged. And the fatalistic thing can be challenged, I think, by doing something that goes against the grain of what you think is, your life or whatever, the kind of destiny or the destination of your life going, and then see that it hasn't, affected it adversely in so many ways. So if you had a number of those examples, you could probably see things that's been good. Like say, and hopefully this is the case, that all the magic I did yesterday, and I did tons of it, I pulled at the full works on the dog, and it goes one way or the other. But of course, then at the end of it, I go, oh, it's just the way it was meant to be, which is, the magician's get out of jail card. But all of these things can be challenged and poked at, and the idea of belief shifting, when you take on a new idea which is opposed to an old idea you have, I think doing it enough, you probably will break through the things, and come a bit more open and less kind of pigeonholed in your mind, and less defined, and having the less definitions about yourself, the better. And things like, oh, I'm an angry person, just decide that you're, loosen your grip on these kind of definitions. I'm a sad person. Let's loosen my grip a bit on that, and don't hold it so close to my heart. Don't make it that if I, where you can kind of go, well, who would I be without my sadness? I've become too associated with it. This is who Tommy Kelly is. That's what the idea Tommy Kelly is one part sadness, one part annoyed about his weight, one part, heart-centered, one part overly confident, one part really not confident. All these little things that we have grouped up into the idea that is ourselves. And we're all just ideas, Well, you may be different from me. I'm certainly an idea. But rather than deciding that these ideas can't be changed, just I want to lessen my grip on who I am. I'm going out and doing things like exposing yourself to different thoughts and different ideas, like I did with CMG. It's a good idea, and it's a good start, and all that thing. But you probably, if you do it the way I did, it's probably going to be challenged in different ways than you expect. And to be challenged in the way you expect is probably really not a challenge to your, it's playing it safe in many ways. So, yeah. So that was another episode of Tommy Kelly Podcast. These podcasts are getting longer and longer each week. They used to be 15 minutes, and they were a lot easier just to do. But, maybe I'm waffling more, maybe I'm getting better at it, maybe I just have more to say than I used to say. Who knows? I'm not going to do the apology ending, nor am I going to do the let's sell you everything ending. If you want to know more about what I do, who I am, podcasts, videos, 40 servants, all of those things, then you just need to go to adventuresinwoowoo.com. And everything you could possibly want to know is all over there, including links to all the social media, all of those things. And on my list is to do that page up a bit. It's slightly a bit haggard at the minute, and just it needs to be a bit more concise than it is. So that is where I will point you, and come talk to me on social media. I'm friendly. I will answer your questions or your inquiries, or just say hello, and wave at me on Facebook if you want. I don't understand it totally, but it seems to be a thing. Next week I'm going to do a question and answer one. So if you have any question, anything at all, you can ask me anything you want. It can be art related, magic related, personally related. You have a problem, whatever, and you want my warped opinion on it, then send it all in. Usually it is long-term ideas that will be reserved for patrons, but they don't I have more time than what the patrons, but the questions they send in to fill a podcast. But it always will go to patrons first. Time will always be dedicated until the point that it'll just be patrons or whatever. So, good people of the internet, may you have the serenity to accept the things you can change. You can change, excuse me. So, have the serenity to accept the things you can change. So, there's parts of your life that you certainly cannot change. And it's just the way it is, whether that's divine plan, whether that's opposition or whatever it is. There's just some things that can't be changed, and it would be great if we could just let them be and not expend our energy on these things. That's not to say that we shouldn't take up or try and attack challenging things. It's more some things you just can't do, or can't do yet, whatever, and just to be okay with that, and to have the courage then to change the things that we can change, because often we focus on the big picture stuff and avoid the stuff that's around us, you know. So that basically we get pissed off at big major political stuff or social stuff or whatever, because we don't really want to deal with our shitty marriage or our crap you know, relationship what you have with your dad or your best friend or whatever it is, you know, or that bully at work or whoever it is. So the courage to be able to face our own stuff, you know, like tend to the part of the garden that you can reach, you know, do the things that are around you, the courage to do the stuff that is around you that you can actually do or whatever. And then of course the last bit is the wisdom to know the difference. So may you have the wisdom, may you know how the bits you can change, the bits you can't change, the mountains that can be climbed and conquered right now, and the mountains that you need to leave for another day or for another lifetime. So good people of the internet, may you have a wonderful week. May death not stalk you for many, many years, and may all your challenges be small and surmountable, and may you have a great and wonderful week full of love, happiness, joy, and all the good things. Talk to you all next week. Be well.